My name is Sarah, and I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my mom is Catholic, and my dad is Jewish. So I grew up with a lot of religion, but not any understanding of God or belief or the truth behind it. From a very young age, I had this knowledge that inside of myself, there was something bad. That at my core, like in my heart, I was bad and wrong. That there was something that wasn't right in me. And I didn't know why, or I didn't know what it was. I just thought I am wrong and I am bad, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I was so young, and I thought it was just me, that I'm wrong. And so I thought that no one would ever love me if they actually knew who I was, because I didn't like me and I didn't want me. And so when I was really little, I started building up this person of Sarah to present to the world, so that they might love me. And so that if they didn't like me, well, it's not me that they're rejecting, it's this falseness. The problem is when they said, Sarah, I love you, I still thought, well, it's not me they're loving, it's this falseness. And so my life was built on lies and built around lies. Before I even knew what a lie was, my whole life was a lie. And because of that, I was very isolated from people around me and from my family and from any kind of love. And because I knew that inside of me I was wrong, I didn't really have any kind of hope in my life of ever being loved or ever being right. I was completely hopeless, and to me, life wasn't worth living. Even though I had a great family, I never wanted for anything. I had a roof over my head, and I had clothes and food, and I went to a great school, but inside of me, I was dead. And the first time I thought to kill myself, I was 11 years old. And the second time I tried, I was 14 and then 16. And I decided the third time I wasn't going to fail. And so I also was really sick growing up as a kid. From the time I was 6 months old in the hospital, and all through growing up, I was in and out of the hospital. I was sick home for weeks from school, and I kind of assumed that I would never graduate high school, that either I would kill myself or some kind of sickness would kill me. And so I just lived with no sense of future, no sense of responsibility, no sense of consequence. I just wanted to die. And everything I did was seeking that end of not having to do any work at all. I didn't think life was worth it. And so here I was, not planning on living past 18, and suddenly I was 18 and I went off to college, and now I'm in this place where I don't have my family around me, I don't have my home around me. I'm lost, I'm alone, I'm hopeless, and I had so much pain and hurt in myself from the death and the darkness that was in me, and I just wanted to run away from it and hide. And so it started with pot, and I would smoke and I would drink, and I got into all sorts of relationships, because when I was high, I didn't have to think about my pain, because the identity, you cannot be another person's hope. And so all of these relationships would burn up really fast and then turn really bad, and then that pain would be even worse. And so my life completely turned into this ever-increasing downward spiral of dependence on drugs and alcohol and other people to give me some sense of peace and rest. And when I found opium, then it was all over, because opium just took everything away from me, and I didn't have to think at all. But then the crash back was even harder. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. And I would use more and more and more, because I never wanted to come back to myself. I never wanted to feel what was actually going on inside of me and deal with my own pain. And at the same time, my brother was going through something very similar. But while I was running away and hiding, he was looking for truth. And in his search, he found a lot of different things. And his heart always was to bring it back to the family. See, he wanted to know what life is and what truth is, and he wanted our whole family to see it, because he saw how broken our family was. And so he would be searching, and he'd get into Taoism. And in high school, he brought me the Tao, and he's like, Sarah, read this book and be Taoist. And I think, oh, sweet, I'm Taoist now. And then he brought me the Bhagavad Gita, and he was like, Sarah, you need to practice yoga, and you need to be Hindi. And I read the Bhagavad Gita, and I thought, oh, I will be Hindu now. And he brought me Siddhartha, and he's like, Sarah, you need to do this type of meditation and be Buddhist. I thought, okay, now I'm Buddhist. And it was all very easy to accept. And I'd read a book, I'd be like, sweet, now I am this. but nothing ever changed. See, it never had an impact on my life, whether it was the power of now or Vipassana meditation or an Ashtanga yoga practice, whatever it was, he brought it back and nothing changed. And he was searching and searching, and about every 6 months he'd find the new truth, right? And one day he found the truth of Jesus. And he accepted Jesus into his life. And he was born again. And I wasn't around him at the time. I was away. And I heard from our family, Adam's gone crazy. He has a new addiction. We don't know what's wrong with him. We're really worried about him. Everything's changed. It's this Jesus thing. We don't know about it. And my comfort to my family was, it's okay, Mom, Dad, in 6 months, he'll be on a new thing. Jesus will be old news. He'll be back to meditation. It's okay. But about 6 months later, I went home, and my brother still loved Jesus. And it's really funny because when I first saw my brother, he was so different. The first time we hung out, we went to a concert together with me and my brother and my dad. And that night, when I talked to him, I just about wanted to punch him in the face because it hurt me as if I had lost my brother. He was so different because before we had a bit of a connection, right? The night before I left to go, we smoked pot together, we drank tea, we meditated, and I thought everything's going to be cool when I get back. But I got back, and now my brother doesn't smoke pot. He doesn't meditate. He knows Jesus. And I didn't like that. And that first night, I just interrogated him about his faith. Do you really believe this? And what about that? And don't tell me this. And come on, really? And he was so good to me and so kind to me, even as I was so mad at him. And some things he was able to answer. And other things he very well put. He said, I'm not sure. I don't know about that. I don't know what's going to happen then. But that's not important. See, what's important is Jesus. And that struck me because my brother always needed to know the truth of the truth of the truth, like everything. And here he had, for the first time in his life, I saw in him peace. And when he started talking about life forever with God, that's when I started crying because I said, who would ever want to live forever with all this stuff in you? And he said, that's it, Sarah. No one wants to live forever with all this stuff. And that was the first time he gave it a name. And he said, that's sin living in you. That you were born with sin. But see, Jesus came and he took your sin on the cross. And when you accept that, he will take that rotten, moldy, dead core out of you and replace it with his light and his life. And he said, now I can't wait to live forever with Jesus because there's life in me. And that's when I cried and I was undone. And he prayed for me. And he started reading the Bible to me. And he started telling me about Jesus. And when my brother prayed for me, I had a memory. I remembered a time about 2 years before this where I had taken too many drugs. I was overdosing and I was dying and I knew it. And some of those drugs were psychoactives and hallucinogens. And so as my heart was slowing down and as my breath was leaving, I began to see these red tendrils from this tapestry above me come down to choke me. And I was sinking into this bamboo rug and I could feel myself sinking. And I knew as these black tendrils were choking me and as I was sinking, I knew I was going to hell and I was dying and I was going to burn. And in my last breath, my head fell, and off to the side, I saw Jesus. And somehow I knew it was Jesus, and his arms were open, and he was a rainbow of light, a bright rainbow of light, and his arms were open to me. And with my last breath, I said, Lord, save me. And in that moment, my door opened. Now, I was in the locked door in a basement, in a locked house, and no one knew I was there. But that door opened, and a friend of mine in that moment grabbed my hand and pulled me up the stairs and out the door and into the light. And I was stone cold sober. There was nothing in my system. I went from too much and dying and unable to think to sober. And in that clarity, I knew in that moment that Jesus had saved my life, that he had saved me. I knew it. And for about 2 days, I knew it. But as I told that story again and again, it became one of those funny things that happens when you're on drugs, and it lost its power, and it drifted back into the back of my mind, in the back of my memory, and it lost itself. But this day, July 12th of 2010 on this boat, when my brother prayed for me, I remembered it. And I shared it with my brother. And this time he looked at me and he said, Sarah, do you want to know the God who saved you? And this time there weren't good reasons in my head. It wasn't all lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was as if something in me was freaking out. It was chaos in my mind, this chaotic shouting of no, you can't do this. This isn't for you. You can't get this. You're too bad. You're too messed up. This isn't just shouting, no. And somehow through all of the shouting in my head, I said, yes. And my brother was very shocked. And I was very shocked. And he said, okay, let's do this. Like, I'll pray with you. And so in this canoe on Lake of the Isles in Minneapolis, we kneeled down and the Bible was open between us where we had been reading in the book of John. And my brother led me in this prayer. And I don't even remember exactly the words I said, but I gave all of my sin to Jesus. And I knew that I needed him. I knew I needed his life. And when I gave my sin to Jesus, and when I asked him into my heart, there was something very, very profound that changed. When I said, Holy Spirit, fill me, I felt it. See, that death that was in me, it was taken out. And what came in me was light and life and truth. And when I opened my eyes, it was as if I was seeing for the first time, like I had never actually seen the world. Everything before had been black and white, and like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz when she steps out of that house and it's Technicolor. That was my life. Suddenly there was color. And see, this night was too beautiful to be real. Like the lake was still glass, and the sky was so blue. It was about 9:45 at night, so just sunset with wisps of cloud. And I knew that God loved me because he made it perfect. And before I had prayed, it was like a hope. Even while I was praying, it was a hope. It was, please, I need this to be true. This is the last thing. This is it. This has to be real. But the moment I opened my eyes and said, Jesus Christ is Lord, the Holy Spirit came inside of me. I knew. It was like, oh, Jesus. Duh. Of course. Gee, nothing else makes sense. And so my brother baptized me right there in the lake. And we rowed back to shore. And we sang the song, I have decided to follow Jesus. And when I stepped off that boat onto the shore, I swear I had lost about 30 pounds because there was no more sin that I was carrying around. There was no more death in me. There was no more darkness and hatred. I was light and life and lightness and joy. And in that moment, I knew I was never going to touch another opiate or psychedelic again in my life. I knew that I didn't need to go to men and relationships to get my filling. I knew that Jesus Christ is Lord, and he changed everything. Oh, hallelujah. It was great. And the funny thing is, my life didn't instantly get better. It's not that all of the reasons that I went to drugs and alcohol went away. It was just that now I didn't need them because I had hope and life in me. And in fact, you might say that my life got worse because, see, 3 weeks later, the man I was going to marry, he broke up with me. And when I went back to school, I had to move out of my apartment, and I lost just about every friend I had because now I was following Jesus, and I wasn't doing drugs, and I wasn't drinking, and they couldn't get what they needed from me anymore when it came to drugs, and they didn't want me anymore because I wasn't getting high, and I lost everyone I knew. But what God replaced it with was so much greater and so much better. See, where I had friends, I was given family. And where I had hopelessness, I had hope, and I had truth, and I had light and love. And so every day I get to walk knowing that there is something greater in me and giving it to every person I encounter, because now I can live, and now I can love, and now I understand that God created me beautiful and wonderfully and amazingly. See, I was crucified with Christ, and now I live, but it's not me who lives, but Jesus Christ who lives in me. And though I walk in the flesh, I walk by the faith of the Son of God who loves me and gave himself for me. And every day I get to walk with him.